We're so excited to have Christopher here today from CNIB. We are thrilled to be able to learn from him. As we all know now, our forum is a 4-day event that is presented by Age Friendly Edmonton. Our mission is to create a safe space for older adults to learn and access resources about health, wellness, and housing. And we're only able to do that due to the generous volunteerism of our community leaders who are stepping up and sharing with us a wealth of wisdom. And so we want to thank them so deeply. Thank you so much for being with us today, Christopher. A little bit about our speaker today. Christopher is the program lead for the community education at CNIB in Alberta, and he's also a client of CNIB. When he lost his sight 16 years ago after experiencing a stroke when he was only 34 years old, he was referred to CNIB to help him find devices that he could use to support the vision that he had left, and training to learn new skills like orientation and mobility, as well as independent living skills like marking appliances so he could still cook for himself and do his own laundry. Christopher says that being out in the community speaking on behalf of CNIB, he feels like he's giving back after all the help that CNIB provided him when he needed it. And we are absolutely so thrilled to have you with us today. Thank you so much, Christopher. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I am delighted to be a part of this because I will take any and every opportunity to talk about CNIB, as was mentioned in the intro. Being a client of CNIB, I know how great it's been for me. And so I'm going to just talk a little bit about that today. And I know that typically when I'm talking to us, to organizations involving seniors and things, a lot of people have heard of CNIB, but not everybody may have they may not understand that just because, the B says blind in our name, Canadian National Institute for the Blind, there's a lot of people who think that, if you're not blind, you can't come see us, you can't come to us for help. And that is absolutely not true. We are here to serve anybody at any stage of vision loss. And so whether you're just starting to lose your vision or whether you are completely blind, and everybody in between, all are welcome at CNIB, and we are here to help at any stage of vision loss, and especially in the senior set, because in the seniors population, there are 4 conditions that are sort of becoming more prevalent, being macular degeneration, glaucoma, cataracts, and diabetic retinopathy. Those 4 conditions tend to be affecting more and more people as we get older, as our population gets older. And so that means that our services are needed, I think, in this time more than they've been in previous decades, just because of the number of baby boomers that are out there who are now experiencing some of these conditions. And so what I want to talk a little bit about today, I'm actually going to share a little bit of my story and talk about just how those things were able to sort of work for me in the help that they provided. And one of the things I'll let you know, first of all, is my previous career, previous to my sight loss, I worked in television. I worked in the broadcast business, and I had a career. Most of my career was with Global TV in a number of different markets. And I loved what I did. I had always wanted to be in broadcasting. I had wanted to be in broadcasting since I was 12 years old. And I was very focused, very targeted young man. I was always about that goal. And when I finished high school, I was able to get my first job in the broadcast business, and I thought my life path was set. I thought I knew exactly where I was going and what I was doing. But I also have a condition called hydrocephalus, or water on the brain. So I have a little shunt that goes from my head to my chest to drain fluid from around my head to another part of my body. And I've had it since birth, and they've had to go in and change this little tubing every now and then, because, as one of my doctors so eloquently put it, it's plumbing. It breaks down. So I've had to have this operation a number of times in my lifetime. And one time when I went in 2005, went in for the operation, was feeling a lot of pain. They went in, they revised the shunt. And when I woke up from the surgery, all I could see was light and shadow. And I didn't really know what had happened. I thought maybe I was just groggy and kind of out of it and, still feeling the effects of the surgery. But upon investigation, we learned that no, what I was seeing was actually, my eyes full wide open, and my brain just wasn't processing what my eyes were giving it, because, as was mentioned in the intro, I had a stroke during my time in the hospital. And the doctor looked at the results, looked at my brain scan and said, well, you'll probably get some of your sight back, but we don't know exactly how much. And as a result of that, he said, well, we don't know how much you're going to get back, but you know what we better do in the meantime is we will refer you to CNIB, which was a very convenient referral because I was living in Toronto at the time. And the hospital that I was in is literally 2 doors over from the CNIB's head office. So it was a really convenient referral. And from that, when the doctor said you're going to get some of your sight back, I had this idea in my head. I got this, my imagination ran wild. And I thought I was going to be that guy that was the miracle story that, went blind for a year and then got all of his sight back and, went on book tours and all of these other things. But then reality set in. And it was, I'm glad that the doctor made the referral to CNIB right away, because it was, it actually turned out to be a lot more useful than I expected it to be. Because I didn't end up getting my sight back. I got some of it back, but I'm still legally blind and it's not getting any better. So, I'm glad that they referred me to CNIB. And even though I didn't necessarily maybe buy into some of the things they were teaching me at the beginning, I'm really glad that I got that experience and got that training, because it has served me very, very well in the last 16 years. And then, having been with them as an employee for the last 5 has been an amazing experience. So I want to talk a little bit about that experience today and some of the things that I was introduced to and some of the programs and services that are available, because, like I said, a lot of people don't know exactly who we are or what we do. So, I thought I'd share a little of that experience. And one of the very first things that happened when I lost my vision, or when I was referred and when I was contacted by CNIB, is they said, I was contacted by an intake worker, and she asked me a whole list of different things. And from that, she determined that I should see some of their specialists on their team. And one of the very first people that I was referred to was the low vision specialist. And the low vision specialist, she helps people use the vision that they have left. And, so if she meets somebody who has macular degeneration, for instance, she knows that they're losing that central part of their vision and that they might have still some of their periphery, be it on the left or the right or upper lower. But she knows that they're losing that central vision. So she will work with them to, turn their head a little bit to the side to use the usable vision, or maybe tilt their head down, tilt their head up a little. And then if that usable vision is a little bit cloudy, or if they're struggling with it a little bit still, she might introduce things like magnifying glasses, like the one that I've got here. This is actually my personal magnifier. Comes with a little light. This one's, I've beaten it up pretty good, so it's not always working for me, but it comes with a little light. And this is a 6 times magnification, and I carry this thing with me everywhere I go. It helps me to do things like read menus, read business cards, read letters and cards from friends, read labels in stores. So I was really helpful, or really glad that they helped me find this, because it's been a wonderful tool that I've taken with me everywhere I go. And in addition to the low vision specialist, One of the other people that I was referred to was the orientational mobility specialist. And the orientational mobility specialist, it was her job to set me up to assess whether or not I needed a white cane, first of all, and then to, if I did, to teach me how to use it. And so she and I had a conversation over the phone, and from our conversation, she determined that I would need what is known as an identification cane. I've got my ID cane here, and I realize my background is kind of cutting it out a little bit. But this is my identification cane. It's very thin, very light, and it doesn't have much of an end on it because this is not the kind of a cane that you tap with like you see in the movies or on television. This is merely just something I carry with me to let other people know that I'm a person with sight loss, so that if they see me walking in an area that that maybe is dangerous for me or that could be dangerous for me, the cane will hopefully tell them, okay, he didn't walk in there because he's not paying attention to what he's doing. He probably didn't see the sign that said he shouldn't be here or something like that. And I'll give you an example of where that came in really handy. Not long after I got my cane, I was out walking in my neighborhood in Toronto, and I was walking up the street along the sidewalk, and there was some construction workers who had dug a hole in the sidewalk up ahead of me. And as I was walking towards them with my cane, one of the construction workers dropped what he was doing, ran over to me, grabbed me by the arm, and walked me around their work, and sort of walked me out of harm's way. And so that's kind of what the cane, it was because the cane told him that I was a person with sight loss, that he knew to kind of get me out of harm's way. So that was really handy, even though I could see them there, and I probably could have walked by them on my own. He didn't know that, but I was glad what he did just the same, because it did come in really handy for me. And it was one of those things that it was, like I said, I was really glad that he did that. But I will tell you one other thing about the cane, just before I move on to any other things. Like I said earlier, because I had this idea that I was going to get better, and I did get some of my sight back, I actually put my cane away for a number of years, because I don't know, I don't want to say that I was embarrassed by it, but I want to say that I just felt like I felt I didn't need it. And I felt I didn't, and if the world didn't know that I had sight loss, so be it. If I didn't need them to know, they wouldn't know. But that actually turned out to be wrong-headed thinking, because about 3 years ago, I was out for a walk on another street, walking in Calgary, where I live now, and walking down the street, and I stepped in wet cement. And it was because, there were construction workers around who should have been watching for me. They didn't have a barrier up, and they should have been watching for me to see that I didn't step in their work, but they missed it. But I think, I didn't have my cane out that day because I was still in that stage where I was thinking I didn't need it. I didn't need anybody to know. And, so I ended up stepping in wet cement. And I realized after that, I should sort of get over my own ego, get over whatever it is that's going on in my head that's preventing me from using the cane, because had I been using the cane, that probably would have got the attention of those construction workers that were standing nearby, and they would have kept me from stepping in the wet cement. As it is, it was on me to go clean my shoes. So kind of my own fault, done at my own peril. One of the next specialist who came to see me was our was the independent living skill specialist. The independent living skill specialist, as her title suggests, she actually came to my apartment, my condo in Toronto, and she talked to me about doing things around the home that I could do to navigate a little more safely and to put things in place where they'd be a little easier to find. And another thing that she did was she helped me to mark appliances. And I'm going to I realize this is cutting out again with my background, but she helped me to mark appliances with these little things that we call bump-ons. And these little bump-ons, they come in different shapes and sizes. And we put these on things like my microwave, the stove, and the washer and dryer, so that I can still use those appliances. So that way I can still be independent. I can still do my own laundry. I can still cook for myself. And I can still, heat things up in a microwave. And I'll give you one example, like on the microwave, for instance. One of the things that we did is we put one of the bump-ons on the 1 minute button, because that's a button I use a lot. And then we also put one on the popcorn button, because that is a really important button, or at least it was to me. So we put it on the popcorn button as well. And this just allows me to be able to have that independence to do these things for myself, so that my wife doesn't have to do them for me, and I can be independent, as the independent living skills specialist title suggests. So it was really handy to have that training as well. And one of the other things that she offered me, and I took her up on this because I thought it would be kind of fun to learn, was she did teach me Braille. I don't read Braille. I don't use it to read books or anything like that. But she said, it might be handy in an elevator, or it might be handy on an airplane, for instance, because they do put Braille on the seat numbers above the seats. So she said, it might come in handy for those kind of things. So I thought, okay, that'll be fun. And so learning Braille was interesting. I was glad to learn it. It was kind of a fun thing to learn while I was recovering and waiting to see if I'd get some of my sight back. And it was, like I said, Braille is like a language. If you don't use it, you lose it. So I never really fully developed the tactile sense to be able to read it. So I don't read books or entire pages of text with Braille, but I can read it very slowly if necessary. And I remember all the dot combinations in my head. So I actually write Braille better than I read it. I have a little slate and stylus. I don't have it here with me today, but I have a little slate and stylus that I can put a piece of paper in, and I can punch every one of the dots, so that I can then print something in Braille. It's like a secret code that I can share with somebody that I want to, if I, it's like I know a code. It's kind of cool. One of the other specialists that I was introduced to was also the assistive technology specialist. And assistive technology is everything from a talking watch to a talking clock to an audio book player that has nice large buttons on it. So there's all kinds of devices and things that the assistive technology specialist showed me, including software for my computer that magnifies the screen for me, so I can still use my computer. And I can do emails, I can do texts, or emails and Word documents and spreadsheets. I can do these Zoom sessions like we're on today, because my screen is magnified and I can just move my mouse around to go find the mute button or the unmute button or whatever I need to find. And so having that technology on my computer and being shown that technology by the technology specialist was really handy to be able to allow me to use the computer, and it has allowed me to remain employed, because if as long as I'm able to use a computer, I've got my large print keyboard, and I've got my magnifying software on the computer, so I can do pretty much anything that anybody else can do on a computer. And one of the other things that the assistive technology specialist showed me was she showed me the technology that exists in cell phones. And again, I apologize, my background's cutting it out. But in the cell phone, so on my phone, like I can see that there are a number of different apps and things on my screen, but I can't read any of them. But I can tap on it. I'm going to turn up the volume here a little bit so you can hear this. I can tap on it, and it'll tell me what the app does. So if I want to know what the weather is, I can tap there, open it up.
Weather, Calgary, mostly sunny, 24 degrees, high 24, okay.
It's a beautiful day here in Calgary. I went out and got a little walk in earlier today. It was a beautiful day to be able to do that. And yes, the voice does talk a little fast, but that is a speed that I'm comfortable with listening to. You can actually, in the settings of the iPhone, you can not only turn on this voiceover feature, but you can actually slow down the voice. You can change the tap speed. You can do a number of things with it. And this thing, because of the phone and the technology that exists within it, and this exists on iPads and it exists on Android devices as well, not just the iPhone. But because of this technology, I'm able to email, text, phone. Somebody sends me a text, it'll read it out to me. I can compose a text to them and it'll read out every word that I'm typing. And then I can have it all, read it all back to me before I send the text so that I know that I've composed it coherently. And it will do all of these things for me so that I can be just like everybody else. I can phone, I can text, I can email, and I can do all the things that my friends do. I just do it a little bit differently, but they don't actually have to know that part. They don't have to know that I'm doing it differently than they do. And I can do, you know, I do my banking, I get directions, I do all of these things on this. So it might sound like a bit of hyperbole to say that I am, you know, that this thing has given me my life back, but it is, I believe it to be true. You know, this, my cell phone gave me, with that accessibility feature built right in, it gave me the ability to do all of those things and be just like everybody else and be able to accomplish, you know, even things like reading a book. Because of my sight loss, I'm not able to read print anymore, but I can download an ebook into my phone, and I can, with the voiceover feature, I can have the voiceover feature read the book to me. And it'll read an entire page. When it gets to the bottom, it flips the page and it keeps right on reading until I tell it to stop, or until I press a button to make it stop. So it's been really, you know, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, you know, even though I didn't think that I was going to need their services, even though I didn't necessarily want to need their services, I'll be honest. I'm really glad that I was connected to CNIB when I was, because it helped me to, you know, have a better quality of life rather than isolating myself and sitting in a corner and, you know, not wanting to interact with people or not wanting to interact with life because, you know, because of the things that they showed me that allowed me to be able to do all of these things. Now, I'm going to stop there just for a second, just to see if any questions or comments have come up in the chat. And then I'm going to share just a few stories, because there's, you know, the other thing about sight loss is, you get two choices. You can either say, woe is me, and be all upset and down and out about it, or you can learn to laugh at the funny, you know, the fun things that it has, sort of the fun things that have happened in my life over the last 16 years because of it. So I'm going to share a little bit of that as well. But I'll stop there for just for a moment to see if Amber or anybody can tell me if there's anything in the chat or.
Absolutely. So for right now, we don't, but if anybody would like to ask Christopher a question, if you would like to use audio, just click the little icon that says raise hand, and I can give you permission controls so that you can unmute your mic. Or if you would like to type a question in the chat box, feel free. You can use either the chat feature or the Q&A feature. And then once we have those there, I'll jump back in and I can read them out.
Okay. And I'll put that out there to you as well, as, you know, to the hosts as well. If you've got questions, I've got answers. And if I don't, I know who does. But like I said, you know, I could have chosen to be all down and out about losing my sight and you know, having to change careers from my television career. But I decided to see it as a bit of an adventure. Um, and I, for my first career the first path that I went down after my sight loss was I did a whole lot of studying with the aid of this big device called a CCTV. They do exist in some seniors buildings. Some people have these in their buildings. Is a CCTV machine where I could put the book on this machine and it would put it up on a large screen for me where I could read all the text. Kind of like for those of you who've never seen one, if you've ever seen the old microfiche machines that they used to have in libraries and doctors' offices and things, you know, the old microfiche machine where they had the little plastic card, you take the card and you put it on there and it would magnify it up on a big screen. This is kind of the same thing. I put my book down there and it magnifies the book. So I was able to do a lot of studying and take all the right courses to land a couple of different positions in the financial services business. I took a few different courses depending on what role I was in. And then from there, went back to school for a couple of years because I realized that as much as I liked numbers, I didn't really like sales. So I got out of the financial services business, went back to school, did accounting and payroll. But then I found that I didn't like the solitude of accounting and payroll. So I went back into financial services for just a little bit and went back into that for a little bit. And then I actually wrote a book about my experience. And so I quit that to focus on getting the book published. And once I got that done, right around that same time, CNIB called and said, you know, hey, would you like to come join us? And so I did. And the last 5 years has been a pretty amazing experience. And just a couple of things that I do have to share with you, because this does come up a lot when I'm in conversations about sight loss and things. People ask me if I miss. People will ask me if I miss driving, and the answer is yes, but no. When I look back on it, the yes part is, you know, I miss a nice long leisurely drive, you know, out to the mountains or, you know, traveling down the highway somewhere, you know, going on a trip. I miss that kind of driving. But when I think more about it, I don't miss rush hour traffic. I don't miss road rage. And I really don't miss winter driving. So that's 3 against 1. So the general consensus is no, I don't miss driving. But I will tell you a little story, fun little story about driving. So back in 2005, just 2 weeks before my sight loss, I had renewed my driver's license. And my doctor, for whatever reason, didn't pull my license at the time. And I was really thankful that he didn't, because it was still a great piece of ID. And so, you know, it's a piece of ID that nobody quibbles with and everybody asks for. I mean, when you go to a bank or you go anywhere else, what's the first thing they ask for? Your driver's license. So I was really glad that he hadn't pulled my license. And, you know, I used it as a piece of ID all that time, but I was smart enough not to drive because I knew that my sight wasn't good enough. In 2010, I was living in Ontario at the time, and in Ontario, just like Alberta, they do renew the license every 5 years. In 2010, I knew that my license was going to come up for renewal, and I thought for sure they were going to pull it. But I thought, well, you know what? It's still a good piece of ID, so I'm going to apply. I'm going to see what happens. So I got the form in the mail, and I filled it all out. And on the second page of the form, it said, is there anything that might inhibit your ability to drive? And I very honestly, in big block letters, wrote legally blind. And I went down to the ministry office. I handed them my form. I handed them my credit card. And 2 weeks later, I got a driver's license in the mail. So I was still smart enough not to use it, even though they did grant me permission to drive. But I knew better, because I just didn't want to be responsible if anything were to happen. I wouldn't want that guilt of you know, hurting anybody, or that feeling of, or even the feeling of worry and anxiety. I find now, all these years later, because I haven't driven in so long, sometimes I'm not a very anxious guy, but occasionally I do get a little bit anxious when I'm behind, when I'm riding in the car and I see, the car that I'm in, somebody tries to cut us off or something like that. And it's like, yeah, you know what? I don't miss that. So I'm really kind of okay that, that there are many other modes of transportation, be it, bus, LRT, Uber. Uber is a great friend. Because of my phone, I can call up the Uber app on my phone, and through the Uber app, it's very accessible, and the voiceover feature reads everything to me, so I don't have to, it tells me the driver's name, the kind of car they're driving, and tells me when they're arriving. So it's become probably my go-to source for getting around most places if I need to be there in a hurry, or there's always buses and trains. So I'm pretty happy just to use those modes of transportation, and I don't really miss the driving thing anymore. I did see a couple things popping up, so I think I'll stop there for just a moment and see what's been popping up on the screen.
All right, we have a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to scroll up a little bit. Okay. What is the name of the machine that helps you read a lot?
Oh, so that is called a CCTV, closed circuit television. It's a rather big gadget that sits on a desk. It's not very portable. There are portable handheld versions of it, but the one I use is a big desktop thing that weighs about 60 pounds.
And then we have another question. What is the title of your book?
Oh, the book. So the book, a little bit cheeky. The book is actually called Life's Not Over, It Just Looks Different.
It's great.
Yeah, it was meant, it started out as a journal. I was just sort of writing about my experience while I was, when I was on long-term disability from my broadcast career. It was suggested to me that I, write down my thoughts, my feelings, what I was going through, what I was experiencing, how life was going with sight loss. And it was probably about 2 or 3 years into doing the journal that I mentioned it to a few people, and they said, I'd kind of like to read that someday. And then a light bulb went off in my head, and I thought, oh, maybe I should do a book. So I took the writing a little more seriously after that. It took me 11 years from start to finish. So I started in about late 2005, maybe early 2006, late 2005 actually. And then I self-published it in 2016. And it's actually at the CNIB office here in Calgary, our registrar, or sorry, our service coordinator, when she first meets clients for the first time, she gives them a whole bunch of different material and things about things that they can check out and programs they can check into. And as suggested reading, she lists my book on there, which is very flattering. I didn't expect that to happen.
We have a comment here that says clever title, which it is.
Yeah, a little bit cheeky, a little bit tongue in cheek. That's kind of my sense of humor.
That's great.
It was actually, and I'll tell you even how that came along is I was doing one of the things that I did after my sight loss again is I did Toastmasters because I always kind of wanted to do Toastmasters. It was always in the back of my head. And I found myself with a little more time on my hands. So I signed up for a Toastmasters club. And I knew right from the beginning that I was never going to be able to do any of my speeches reading notes. So I knew that I'd have to memorize all my material, memorize what I wanted to talk about. And that, which was fine. I just took a lot of effort into memorizing my speeches and my material. But I was actually coming up with an idea for a speech about sight loss. And So that title actually came to me first as a speech, and then I went, oh no, that's the title of the book. So the title got redeployed. It didn't become a Toastmaster speech, it became the title of the book instead.
That's great. We also have a question wondering, is your book available somewhere else?
It is available online. It's not available in the bookstores. Getting into bookstores is actually a lot harder than people think, but it is available online. And it is also for people who are, this is actually something brand new that I just found out about 2 weeks ago. So there is what used to be known as the CNIB Library. It's now known as CELA, the Center for Equitable Library Access, which is a library resource for people who are losing their vision, that they can access books in Braille, audio, and large print. CELA is actually adding my book to their library, so it'll be out. They'll have it available in their library sometime next year.
Oh, congratulations. That's great. We also have another question. Is there funding to assist clients? And if yes, where should people start to look for assistance? And to clarify, funding to cover specialized equipment.
Yes, absolutely. And I am so glad that question came up. So yes, there is funding. There is funding here in Alberta. And we're one of only, I believe it's 2, maybe 3 provinces that have it. Alberta being one of them. We have funding called STEP funding, the Specialized Technical Equipment Program. And the way that you access the STEP funding is you have to be registered as a CNIB client, which is free to register. You can just either have your eye doctor send in a report to CNIB and the team will process it. Or if you are somebody who is having trouble with your vision, and you can do what is known as a self-referral. And so by self-referring, you can contact CNIB or you can go online if you're online savvy, and just let us know that you think you need to tap into CNIB services, and a member of the team will get in touch and they will ask for permission to contact the eye doctor, because our team at CNIB, we are not the eye doctors. We don't diagnose anybody. We get all of our information from what the eye doctor tells us about a person's condition, their acuity, their field of view, everything. We don't do any of that diagnosis. We just know what to do with the information. But back to the question about the funding, yes, once you're a registered CNIB client, if you want to tap into some of the assistive technology, like an audiobook player or some of those things, you can qualify for the STEP funding. There's different criteria to qualify depending on the kind of equipment that you're trying to access. For some things, you have to be legally blind, which means your acuity has to be 20/200 or worse. And for other things, you can qualify as low vision, which is 20/70 or worse. So there's different criteria there for different devices. And also there's different funding amounts that the STEP program covers depending on the category of the device. So it covers everything from magnifiers to Daisy book players to the CCTV readers. There's different categories for all of those things, different price thresholds of what the government will cover. And you can, if you contact CNIB, they can give you all that information about the STEP funding and what is covered and to what extent. Any other questions, comments? I'm just I was thinking, oh, okay, what other fun little story can I tell you? One of the questions that I often get, I always get questions about guide dogs. Everybody loves dogs. Everybody goes, ooh, ah, for a puppy. But so guide dogs are great. But the one thing I will say about a guide dog is that you have to be a dog person if you want to get a guide dog. If you're not a dog person, I wouldn't recommend it, because when the dog is not working, it's still a pet. You have to take it out for walks. You have to take it out to relieve itself. You have to give it toys to play with. So if you're not a dog person, a guide dog's probably not for you. And I am not a dog person. I am actually a cat person through and through. And so when I first lost my sight, people asked me if I was going to train my cat to help guide me. But the answer to that was no, because my cat is extremely lazy, at least the cat I had at the time. And I absolutely envisioned, like, I'd train him to walk me or to walk in front of me, and we'd get halfway across the street. He'd find a nice warm place in the sun and lay down for a nap, and that would be the end of both of us. So that I knew that wasn't going to happen. But I do have, so there are no such thing as guide cats. However, I do have a seeing eye cat, and what happened was, my doctor put me on these pills. They're these tiny little pills. They're only about this big. They're white, and I have an almost white floor. And I dropped one of the pills on the floor one day, and my cat came running over to it, and he stopped, and he just stared at it. He didn't play with it. He didn't eat it. He didn't try to bite it, but he just stared right where it was. So it made it easy for me to find. So he was my seeing eye cat that helped me find it.
That's awesome. We also have John, you're one of our callers using the phone. I just noticed that you're unmute. If you have a question, please feel free to ask it now. If you don't, no worries at all.
Okay, I just a couple of comments. One, I thought you might want to mention the Victor stream with regards to CELA as well.
Mm-hmm.
Downloading books onto it, of course. And secondly, what is your role with the CNIB in Calgary?
So my official title is I am the program lead for community education. So it is actually my job to do presentations like this. It's always more fun in person, but virtual works too. Yeah, so it is my job to be out in the public and educating people about our programs and services and talking about sight loss. But to go to your other point, John, about the Victor stream, John is absolutely right. He's obviously a well-seasoned user of this technology. The Victor stream is an audiobook player that is it's quite small and portable, as opposed to the original Victor reader, which was a desktop CD player. The Victor stream is not a CD player. You download the books into it, but you can download audiobooks into it, and you can play them through that device. So it's actually quite popular amongst people who want to listen to audiobooks through that means.
Yeah, I am myself. I'm totally blind, so I make a lot of use of it.
Yeah, I hear you on that, because I have a number of clients who tell me that they get a good 12 hours a day of use out of their readers.
Yeah.
And we have another question. Actually, we have a couple comments as well. Let me just scroll up and make sure I'm not missing anything.
Mm-hmm.
We have one that says, thanks so much for answering my question in this presentation. Another one that says, this is so uplifting and reassuring to know that there are resources to assist individuals. And then we have another comment, another question. Do you have a counterpart in Edmonton who could do this presentation when we go back to face-to-face?
As of right now, no, because my counterpart in Edmonton, about a year ago, he defected to Ontario. He thought the grass was greener in Ontario, so he's gone to live there. He's still with CNIB, but he's in a different role over there. So they haven't filled his shoes yet. So I was actually in Edmonton just last week doing some in-person presentations, just sort of under the wire before all the restrictions really kicked in again. So for right now, I'm getting around the province a little bit more, but we're hoping to fill my colleague's shoes up there and have somebody locally that can do presentations as well.
Wonderful. Oh, and we have another question. Any tips on how to convince a person who has very little vision left to reach out to benefit from CNIB?
Oh yeah, that is a tough one. And I thank you for asking that question, because it is a bit of a challenge. Convincing somebody is hard. I think the biggest thing that I've noticed, especially when I've noticed, when I've had people come into our office and they're coming in for the first time, and maybe a family member has brought them in, sometimes grudgingly. I remember one gentleman coming in, but we are here for fact finding only. He was not happy to be there. But But as he started to see, and I think, so to go to your question, I think if you can find, whether it's online through our website at cnib.ca, or whether you come into the physical office when restrictions allow again, you know, if you can find some things that you know will make their life easier, you know, just say, hey, you know, I happen to see this device that I think would really help you out, this audiobook player, you know, something like that. It's a great way to enjoy the story. You can have it read to you. You know, it might just sort of get the person's gears turning that, oh, okay, yeah. And, you know, they might say, oh, where did you get that? Well, got it from CNIB, you know, and it just, you sometimes have to sort of tap into the things that they want, that you notice them struggling with, and that you know of a place, or you know some people that can help them with some devices that can help make those struggles less of an ordeal. I think is the biggest way to really convince people, is to make it touch them in the heart.
And Kevin responds, thank you for this precious answer, Christopher. Yeah, and
My pleasure.
And I know that we've reached time, but you know, just what you were saying there in regards to, you know, wanting to connect with somebody's heart. You did that so beautifully in this presentation. I just want to thank you, you know, so much for sharing, you know, not just a wealth of information, but also your own story. You know, I think there's such a level of vulnerability and strength that came through. And so thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And if anybody has any other questions that they would like to reach out to CNIB or Christopher, we do have CNIB's contact information on this session. So please feel free to reach out directly that way. I just see that there's one final little question that got in there before we'll depart for the day. Is there a place at CNIB or a store where one can try out and maybe buy assistive devices?
Great question. So unfortunately in Alberta here, the stores, we had stores in Calgary and Edmonton, and unfortunately they did close. However, if a person wants to try out some of these devices or things, again, it comes back to getting registered as a client. If you get registered as a client, or if someone you know is registered as a client, they can make an appointment with, say, the assistive technology person, for instance, or they can make an appointment with the low vision specialist, you know, depending on what kind of devices it is that they want to tap into. And through those appointments with those respective specialists, that is the way that you would get to try out the devices and actually get some hands-on time. Because unfortunately, with the stores having physically closed, they've gone very much to we have gone very much to an online model where you can buy these things online, or you can purchase them over the phone, but you have to connect with those specialists in order to be able to try them out hands-on these days.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Christopher. This has just been absolutely phenomenal. We really appreciate you sharing everything that you did with us this afternoon. I want to thank everybody for attending. This is our last session of day one of our 2021 Seniors Forum, and we will be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Hope to see everybody then. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Everybody for tuning in, thank you, and enjoy the rest of the this Seniors Forum. I think it's a fabulous thing you're doing, and thank you for having me be part of it. I've really had fun.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Really appreciate that.